Have you ever wondered why some spiritual wounds grow silently, unnoticed until they suddenly break a person from within? Have you ever felt the quiet rise of pride in your heart, so subtle you tried to ignore it, hoping God wouldn't notice? And have you ever feared what heaven sees when a soul clings to hidden pride, refusing to bow before the truth? One night, in the dim glow of her small convent cell, where the candlelight trembled like a fragile heartbeat, Saint Faustina was shown something that shook her to the core. Hidden pride is not merely a weakness, it is a silent poison that kills the soul from the inside, and the result before God is far more terrifying than anything earthly eyes can imagine. Before we continue, subscribe if you want to understand the deepest spiritual lessons Jesus entrusted to Saint Faustina through divine mercy. Faustina had spent the entire day in humble tasks, working in the kitchen, scrubbing pots, sweeping floors, ordinary acts that nourished her soul with peace. But as night fell, she felt a heaviness rise within her, an interior awareness that Jesus wished to reveal something painful yet necessary. She knelt beside her narrow bed, the wooden floor cold beneath her knees, and closed her eyes. In that silence, Jesus opened her heart to the reality of hidden pride, not as an idea, not as a flaw, but as a spiritual sickness that slowly suffocates the soul. She felt it first like a shadow, quiet, almost respectful, waiting inside the heart of a person who appeared good, devout, and disciplined. Pride rarely enters through loud rebellion. It enters through admiration, through self-deception, through subtle comparisons. It begins when a soul says, "I am not like them," even if the words never pass the lips. It begins when a person believes their prayer is superior, their sacrifices more valuable, their holiness more visible. Faustina sensed the soul Jesus showed her, one that seemed virtuous on the outside, but carried a secret vanity deep within, a vanity that had been ignored for so long it had grown roots. Jesus allowed her to feel the spiritual state of that soul, and what she felt was terrifying: emptiness, a cold emptiness where grace once flowed freely. Pride had choked humility. It had hardened the heart until God's light could no longer penetrate. Faustina understood in that moment that pride does not kill the soul by violence. It kills it by isolation. It convinces the person they need no help, no correction, no mercy. And when a soul refuses mercy, it refuses life. The result before God was not dramatic fire or divine anger. It was something far more devastating: distance. A distance so deep, so cold, that Faustina felt it as a spiritual abyss. Hidden pride had placed the soul not in punishment, but in exile. Exile from grace, from intimacy, from the gentle whisper of God. She trembled, realizing how easily any person could fall into this danger. And she begged Jesus, "Never let pride hide inside me. Tear it out, even if it hurts." Faustina carried the weight of that revelation into the next morning. The convent was quiet, still touched by the soft gray light of dawn. She moved through the hallway with her usual serenity, yet her heart felt unsettled, as if Jesus were preparing her for something even deeper. As she reached the chapel, the wooden pews still cool from the night air, she knelt and placed her forehead against her folded hands. And in that humble posture, Jesus allowed her to experience more clearly how hidden pride works within a soul. She sensed it like a slow tightening, a subtle shrinkage of the heart. Hidden pride never announces itself. It does not scream. It whispers. It quietly convinces the soul that it does not need correction, that its intentions are always pure, that its judgments are always right. Faustina felt the interior posture of the soul Jesus showed her. A soul that prayed beautifully, spoke with calm piety, and offered small sacrifices, but could not bear the slightest criticism. Beneath the serenity was a trembling fear of being seen. Such a soul would rather appear holy than become holy. In her prayer, Faustina saw how this hidden pride grows, one unconfessed thought at a time, one small refusal to admit fault, one moment of silently comparing oneself to another. It gathers strength through secrecy. And when the person refuses to expose it, out of shame, out of stubbornness, out of fear, it begins to drain the life of the soul the way a vine chokes the tree that holds it. Jesus let her feel the spiritual consequence of this pride, not a punishment but a condition. It was like standing in a room without air. The soul gasped but could not breathe because humility is the lung of the spiritual life and pride collapses it. Faustina felt the soul sinking further into itself, unable to receive grace, unable to feel God's nearness, unable to soften. This terrified her, not because God was severe, but because pride made the soul unreachable. Mercy was being offered, but the soul had sealed its doors from the inside. Her prayer deepened as she whispered, "Jesus, how does a soul come back from this?" And in that moment, she sensed his response, not in words, but in a warmth spreading through her heart. Humility. Only humility breaks the chains of hidden pride. A soul must bow before truth, not in humiliation, but in freedom. Pride isolates. Humility reconnects. Faustina then remembered moments from her own past, times when she sank into silent pride without even noticing. A moment when she judged another sister harshly. A moment when she felt secretly pleased with her own sacrifices. A moment when she resisted correction. These memories humbled her deeply. She realized that pride is never fully absent from any heart. It must be confronted daily, with sincerity, vigilance, and dependence on God. As she rose from prayer, she felt an ache of compassion for souls trapped in hidden pride. She knew they were not evil. They were afraid of being seen as small, afraid of needing mercy, afraid of appearing weak. And Jesus wanted her to pray for them with tenderness, not judgment. As Faustina went about her daily duties, she couldn't shake the interior weight of what Jesus had revealed. In the bakery room that afternoon, the air was warm and dense from the rising dough. The wooden table was covered with flour, and the smell of fresh bread filled the space. Her hands moved rhythmically as she shaped each loaf, but her heart was somewhere else, listening to the whisper of grace inside her. It was there in the simplicity of work that Jesus opened her understanding even more. She sensed a soul struggling silently, a soul who wanted desperately to appear humble but refused to be humbled. Pride had woven itself into the smallest corners of their thoughts, in their desire to be praised for charity, in their irritation when unnoticed, in their subtle comparison to others who seemed less disciplined or less devout. Faustina felt the heaviness of this interior duplicity. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't violent, it was quiet, like a slow poison that numbs the heart before destroying it. She understood then that hidden pride creates an interior loneliness, unlike any other. A soul trapped in it cannot ask for help, because it cannot admit it needs help. It avoids confession not by refusing to go, but by refusing to be honest. It prays, but the prayer is stiff, as if spoken through a locked jaw. It serves, but with a secret expectation of reward. And every time the reward doesn't come, bitterness grows in the shadows. Pride doesn't merely kill humility, it replaces it with resentment. Jesus allowed Faustina to feel the spiritual suffocation of that soul. She felt the dryness of its prayer, the exhaustion of carrying its own image, the fear of being exposed. This fear was what terrified her most, because it created a barrier even divine mercy could not cross unless invited. A soul that refuses truth becomes impenetrable, not because God withdraws, but because the soul refuses entry. She paused her work, leaning her hands on the table as the weight of what she felt pressed down on her. A lump formed in her throat. She whispered quietly, "Jesus, this is too much for a soul to bear alone." And in that moment, she sensed his answer in the stillness, a silent invitation to trust. Jesus was teaching her that even the most pride-entangled heart can be saved if it takes one sincere step toward humility. Just one. A small confession, a small acknowledgement of weakness, a small surrender. Faustina then remembered how Jesus used to correct her pride gently, sometimes through a sister who spoke firmly to her, sometimes through interior discomfort when she desired praise, sometimes through a task that humbled her unexpectedly, and she realized that every painful moment of humility had been a gift, an opening for mercy to enter. She looked at the bread rising in the warmth and understood. The soul rises only when it allows itself to be kneaded, pressed, shaped. Pride resists this. Humility welcomes it. And that is why hidden pride kills. It refuses transformation. That evening, as the convent settled into a quiet rhythm, Faustina walked slowly through the courtyard. The sky was fading into shades of rose and deep blue, and the air felt cool against her skin. She moved with calm steps, but inside her spirit there was a trembling, an awareness that Jesus wanted to reveal something even more serious about hidden pride. She found a secluded corner near the old stone wall, where vines crawled delicately upward, and paused. There, in the hush of twilight, Jesus allowed her to sense the final descent of a soul consumed by pride. She felt it like a distant echo first, a fading heartbeat of grace. Pride had hardened the soul so gradually that it no longer noticed God's gentle invitations. Each time the soul chose to elevate itself, grace retreated, not as punishment, but as consequence. Faustina felt the terrifying emptiness of a heart that had grown cold toward the light. Its prayers were mechanical, its acts of charity were hollow. Its conscience had become numb, unable to feel either guilt or tenderness. What frightened her most was not the presence of evil, but the absence of God. She understood then that hidden pride is nothing more than spiritual blindness. The soul begins to believe it is walking in the light, even while it moves steadily into darkness. Jesus let her feel the interior space of that lost heart, a long corridor without windows, where footsteps echoed endlessly with no destination. It was not tormented, just frighteningly empty. Emptiness is the true terror of pride. A soul stripped of humility becomes incapable of receiving love, incapable of hearing God, incapable of bending toward mercy. Faustina pressed her hand to her chest as she felt the weight of this revelation. She whispered, "Jesus, how does a soul reach such a place without noticing?" And in the silence she sensed the answer rising within her. Pride grows where truth is avoided. Every time the soul ignores an uncomfortable correction, every time it defends itself instead of examining itself, every time it seeks admiration rather than sincerity, another layer of hardness forms around the heart. Layer upon layer, until grace can no longer enter. She felt a sudden wave of sorrow. Sorrow not only for the soul Jesus showed her, but for humanity itself. How many people live in this quiet self-deception? How many appear holy on the outside, but refuse to let God touch the hidden corners of their hearts? How many choose to be admired rather than transformed? This sorrow was so heavy that tears gathered in her eyes. She leaned against the cold stone wall and prayed, "Jesus, have mercy on us. We do not know how deeply pride cripples us." And then, just as her tears began to fall, she felt a warmth descend upon her soul. It was gentle, like the last ray of sunset resting on the earth. Jesus showed her that even a soul buried in hidden pride is not abandoned. The moment it whispers a single word, "Help," he runs to it. He breaks through the blindness. He softens the hardness. He restores breath to what was suffocating. But the soul must allow it. Humility must open the door. Faustina took a deep breath, her heart settling into peace. She understood that pride kills, but humility resurrects. The next day, Faustina was assigned to the infirmary, where sick and elderly sisters lay in quiet beds, some whispering prayers, others lost in their own frailty. The air was filled with the soft scent of herbs and warm water. As Faustina moved gently from one bedside to another, offering comfort and small acts of care, Jesus used that humble setting to teach her something profound. Pride cannot coexist with genuine love. The moment love is real, pride suffocates. The moment pride takes root, love begins to die. She noticed a frail sister struggling to sit up, her hands trembling with weakness. Faustina quickly supported her, adjusting her pillows with tender care. The sister's eyes softened with gratitude, silent, sincere, beautiful. And in that quiet exchange, Faustina felt a wave of understanding rise within her. Humility grows where suffering is embraced, not resisted. Humility thrives where the heart bends to serve without expecting recognition. But hidden pride recoils from these moments. It fears vulnerability. It despises weakness. It whispers that service is beneath us, or that love must be seen to be valued. As Faustina continued her tasks, Jesus allowed her to sense the state of a soul tangled in hidden pride. She felt its interior resistance, how it avoided serving others unless praised, how it resented those who received more attention, how it carried a secret bitterness against anyone more loved or trusted. Pride does not need grand gestures to destroy. A single jealous thought, a single refusal to forgive, a single desire to be above another is enough to begin its work. What terrified Faustina most was the way pride disguises itself as righteousness. She sensed a soul that believed itself devout because it never missed prayer, never broke rules, never appeared disobedient. Yet Jesus showed her that its devotion was hollow, because the soul did everything to maintain an image, not to seek God. Pride had woven a spiritual costume so convincing that even the person wearing it no longer recognized the deception. She felt the sorrow of that soul as if it were her own. It was not evil. It was wounded. Wounded by comparison, by insecurity, by the silent fear of being insignificant. Pride had entered not through arrogance but through a desperate need to feel worthy. And once inside, it built walls that kept grace out. The soul tried to love God, but its love was stiff, guarded, afraid. Hidden pride had turned the heart into a fortress, and Jesus stood outside knocking gently. Faustina's breath trembled as she realized how close she too had come to such danger in her past. There were moments when she desired approval, moments when she wished to be admired for her sacrifices, moments when she resisted correction. But Jesus, in his mercy, always humbled her, sometimes painfully, so he could protect her from becoming what she now saw. She placed a damp cloth on the forehead of an ill sister and felt a sudden stillness in her soul. It was as if Jesus whispered, "This is how a soul heals, through love that costs something, through humility that forgets itself." In that moment, Faustina understood. Pride may kill a soul, but every act of hidden love resurrects it. As night fell once more over the convent, a calm silence wrapped the corridors like a soft veil. Faustina walked slowly toward the chapel, her heart tender from everything Jesus had revealed over the past days. The candles flickered gently, their small flames bending as if listening to her footsteps. She knelt in the dim glow, the cool stone floor grounding her, and breathed in deeply. It was here, in this sacred quiet, that Jesus allowed her to see the final and most terrifying truth about hidden pride. It is not God who withdraws from the soul withdraws from God. She felt the spiritual condition of such a soul with piercing clarity. Pride had created a subtle but devastating shift, a turning inward so intense that the soul no longer recognized its own need. In its blindness, it mistook self-sufficiency for strength. It mistook stubbornness for conviction. It mistook independence for holiness. And worst of all, it mistook silence from heaven as approval, when in truth, the silence was the echo of a heart that had stopped listening. Faustina sensed how terrifying this blindness was. A soul trapped in hidden pride continues to live, pray, speak, move, but without the slightest awareness that grace is slipping through its fingers. It becomes spiritually numb, not in rebellion, but in indifference. It still approaches God, but with a closed heart. It still kneels, but refuses to bow internally. It still speaks holy words, but its lips are disconnected from its spirit. This, she realized, is the true death of the soul, to be alive on the outside but hollow within. She pressed her hand against her chest as she felt the ache of this emptiness. Jesus let her feel the moment such a soul finally stands before God, not in flames or terror, but in a devastating clarity, the tragedy of what it could have become and did not. She sensed the crushing realization of a lifetime spent protecting an image instead of allowing God to transform the heart. The soul saw in one terrible instant the opportunities for grace it had wasted, the love it had resisted, the humility it had feared. Pride had promised greatness, but delivered only spiritual famine. This was the terrifying result Jesus showed her, not the wrath of God, but the truth revealed too late. Pride had not merely wounded the soul, it had imprisoned it, starved it, blinded it, and kept it from receiving the mercy freely offered again and again. Faustina bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Jesus," she whispered, "deliver every soul from this blindness. Even if humility breaks us, let it break us open toward you." And in that moment, she felt a warmth flood her heart, a gentle radiance, like light moving through stained glass. Jesus reassured her that even the proudest heart can return, that no soul is too far gone if it will simply take one step toward truth. She remained there, letting that mercy wash through her. She understood that the only thing more powerful than pride is a moment of sincere humility. It resurrects what pride has killed. It restores what pride has stolen. It opens what pride has sealed. And in that understanding, she felt peace. For in the end, the terrifying result is not meant to frighten, it is meant to awaken.